Welcome back to the Blog Boy Roundtable. We've got a fantastic four this week of myself, Seth Vornador, Robert Stieg, and Nathan Bond of the Bay Area Examiner, and Nick Simon of DraftKings Network. Well, guys, last week, not our best week collectively. Now, we're still doing pretty good on the season. We're sitting at 55 and 45 for the season. So still in kind of the money, so to speak, being 55% on the year. But there was one game last week that we all aided on. And, I think we can all blame Nathan Bond for this. Lane Kiffin heard the Nepo Baby slander and came out and dropped it on LSU's head. LSU could not cover the 2.5. Nate, do you have anything to say to Lane Kiffin? Do you want to apologize?
No, I don't. I don't want to apologize. I appreciate him finally being able to do his job and beat someone that's supposed to be better than him. Because he definitely blew his shot 2 weeks ago against the Alabama team that clearly looked wounded. And I don't know if he's going to get another shot at a depleted Bama. And I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure Hal Steinbrenner even has won a World Series, and he is maybe the worst Nepo Baby owner in sports history. He has kind of ruined the Yankees. As a Rays fan, I love that. But, I mean, talk about, starting on third and scoring on a wild pitch. Hate it.
Yeah. Sorry, just the music start playing in my ear. What's interesting, or not interesting, but what's crazy about that game is LSU actually kind of dropped a touchdown in the end zone on the last play of the game. If you watch that, the ball is in the guy's hands, and they might have covered. Then LSU was up 9; they were favored by 2.5. Couldn't quite do it. Nick, is this an LSU team that you'll never want to pick ever again, but with this defense?
Yeah, this defense with Matt House, the defensive coordinator, has problems. It has a lot of problems. Offense is pretty good. Jane Daniels is playing great. Luke Neighbors is doing his job and everything like that. but this is highly concerning for an LSU defense that is supposed for a team that's they're still very much in the SEC West race, the reigning SEC West champions, but this is concerning. And the schedule, it's still not going to be easy for them coming down the stretch. Good God.
They have an interesting game this week. They have to go on the road to Mizzou. That could be points. I don't know. It could be a wild one. Stieg, we all picked LSU. Were you surprised?
I hate Brian Kelly. I hate him right now. He's dead to me.
You went against your personal feelings in that one. Never again.
I should trust, whenever I see an SEC team playing at home that looks somewhat competent. I'm sitting here naively thinking that LSU's battle tested at this point. No, they were pooping their pants the entire game. That defense had nothing. Second that fourth quarter started and the crowd got a little raucous, there was a little poo-poo coming out of those pants from Brian Kelly's sideline. So, yeah, that was annoying.
I think potentially something to watch for potentially this year is if LSU's defense just continues to be terrible and they lose a couple games that you might have thought before the season they definitely wouldn't. This Missouri game could be a tough one. I think a lot of people are thinking maybe it's a good place to buy back on LSU, but they're only a 5.5 point favorite at Missouri. If they lose that one, they could have their season could crater. And Brian Kelly doesn't seem to be looking in the mirror too much. I think he said something to the effect of these are the players we've got or something like that. So I don't think I don't think he's a master motivator in terms of getting the guys to play for him. So that'll be something to watch for going forward. Will LSU implode, which would be interesting and maybe a little funny. Other notable from the weekend, we'll talk about Notre Dame and their never in doubt cover that most of us had last week. We'll talk about them later in the show. But the other kind of interesting game was that USC Colorado, after the performance against Oregon. Nate, I know that was your off the board pick, was USC minus 21.5. Looked pretty good there for a long while in that game.
Yeah, they ruined my off the board streak. I had correctly picked my off the board picks right every single week so far this season, and they were teetering on going up, 28, and just never could kick that door in the second half, and then they just started. That defense is terrible. I still have no idea how Alex Grinch continues to get gainful employment. Like, it does not make sense to me whatsoever.
Do you guys remember, where was he was he with Leach or something at Washington State? Is that where he was? Because he got this reputation of being a guy that was really good despite, limitations of his roster. And then he went to Ohio State for a spell. But man, yeah, they're not very good. And they went to the portal, try to get some guys, but they're continually pretty bad. And that might be the thing that costs them this year, because there's a lot of really good offenses in the Pac-12.
I'm kind of side-eyeing Lincoln because, dude, you're at USC. You can, hell, you was at Oklahoma. Like, you can upgrade at defensive coordinator if this isn't working out. I know he's your guy. He's been there. He's been with you for a while, but you're the head coach at USC. You can go out and get yourself an actual defensive coordinator. I don't know, man. That team, again, like we just mentioned it with LSU, that team, obviously amazing offense, number one pick in the NFL draft, everything like that. It's everything that you would want from a USC offense, but that defense is going to cost you some games down the stretch because, buddy, schedule's going to get tougher starting next week when they have to go to South Bend to play Notre Dame. Like that. Oh, buddy.
Yeah, Grinch is the Grinch stole Christmas once, and he seems like he's stealing paychecks in California. Steve, any thoughts on the USC defense? Is this just going to be an over team until further notice?
Yeah, basically. This seems like it's going to just absolutely crater for Lincoln there in like the next year. Like, the second Caleb Williams leaves that door to go to the NFL, like, you could just kind of see the writing on a USC first year in the Big Ten just getting mollywopped by the Michigans, Ohio States, the Penn States, even the Minnesotas and the Wisconsins of the world. Like, it seems like no matter how much talent you can put at that defensive side of the ball, they just can't find a confident defensive coordinator that says, yeah, we can do something with it. They've gone through a litany of defensive coordinators over the last 15 years. We're with one of them, and he's turned out pretty good for us. And for some odd reason, whatever is in the air at the Coliseum just doesn't work for defensive coordinators, whether it's how they're preparing or what's going on around the horn or something like that. Something has to be in the water there for the defense at USC to be consistently this bad, despite who is playing, despite who's coaching. Like, is there someone in USC's offense, like the office, that has been continuously a part of the defensive staff for the past 15 years? Because that person needs to get fired. That person is cursed and is clearly causing all of this for them.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like a recruiting base issue. I don't know. I think especially up front, they're just not as big out west on either side of the ball. That's kind of a trend in the last 4 or 5 years that you're not seeing as many big guys out west. So I wonder if that's part of it. But it's there hasn't been a ton of great defenses out west really in recent memory. So who knows? But let's move on to this week. We've got some pretty big games. We've got really one big one and then a couple other ones that are interesting matchups. Kind of somewhat maybe inflated records for some of these teams, but the big one, we'll start with the big game of the week. The game day is there. It's Red River. You got Texas is a 6.5-point favorite against Oklahoma. The total is set at 60.5. Vito could not join us this week, but he likes Texas to cover the 6.5. Stieg, what do you think?
I want to go off the rails on this one a little bit.
Oh.
I'm going under 60.5. I think that, I mean, all things aside in this rivalry, you throw out every preconceived notion of what has happened prior to this game, because throw it all out the window. Nothing matters except that these two teams absolutely hate each other, and these teams and these coaches are putting bulletin board material up all week and all night and all day and everything like that. Last year aside, it just seems like they're just due for the opposite of a shootout, like just two dudes at opposite ends of the field with a knife, just throwing it at each other, and that's basically what I think we're going to end up having. I still think they might score some points here and there. I just think that there's probably going to be some more aggression on the defensive side of the ball, trying to get takeaways, trying to force Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel to be uncomfortable. Usually when I see two high-profile quarterbacks like this, it screams to me, hey, they might suck this game. So I'm going with the under here.
Yeah, I've heard some kind of sharp guys out there that like the under in this game as well. Nick, where are you leaning? This is one for me that you look at all the numbers and everything, and I saw somebody did went and looked at all 5 or 6 different advanced stats previews, and it was almost split down the middle in terms of winner, loser. What are your thoughts on this one? Because it seems pretty even, especially by the numbers.
Yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with Stieg. I went with the under here because when you look at it, both of these teams, when you look at SP Plus and FPI, both of these teams are two of the highest ranked defensive units in the entire country. On Oklahoma's side, I was looking up Oklahoma's side. Got to give credit where credit's due. Ted Roof's defense has not been the disaster that it was last year. I going into the season, one of my predictions was Oklahoma under, just because I predicted Oklahoma's not going to be able to stop anybody. And granted, they still haven't necessarily got into the meat and potatoes of the Big 12 schedule yet, but their defense has been their defense has still been pretty good. They're 10th in the nation in defensive third down conversion percentage, and they're tied for 4th in turnover margin. And then on the other side with Texas, they're right above OU, ranked 9th in defensive third down conversion percentage. And then they're 50% in the red zone. So they're just absolutely stonewalling teams who even make it within the 20. So I think both teams have high-powered offenses, but they're going to have to really work for the points here. So I could see this kind of similar to the Alabama game, where it's in the ballpark of 30-24 or something like that. But I have the under here because I think those defenses are going to really, really make Mr. Gabriel and Mr. Ewers' life hard in this game.
Yeah, one thing that really pops out when looking at Texas's stats is that their success rate on offense is 99th in the country. Now they've played we saw that Alabama defense live and in person. They're pretty good, and they can bring down a team success rate pretty quickly. But yeah, that's kind of odd to me that it's just they're not great down to down, but they've been explosive enough to kind of cover everything up. Their EPA numbers are all really good. To me, this is a toss-up. I do think the under is an interesting play. I'm going to just take Oklahoma plus 6.5. My worry is that Oklahoma has not really played anyone, and Texas is somewhat more battle-tested. So that does worry me a little bit. But I'm just going to take the points here because I'm really not sure which way to go. Nate, what are you thinking on this one?
So this is the fourth time in the series that the game has been played on October 7th. Texas is 1-2 in those games. The under has hit twice in the previous 3 games. Each time that they've won, let me double check here. So October 7th, 2006, they won 28-10. That would be under the 60 points.
Go deep in the trends here.
I mean, and then in 1978, they lost. But
I remember it like it was yesterday.
It was also under. 2000, we don't want to talk about 2000. Oklahoma won 63-14, but I think that was their national championship year, if I'm not mistaken. So that's not really fair. I'm taking Texas, and gun in my head, if I had to also pick the over/under, I'm picking under. Texas won last year, 49-0. And the games have been pointy outside of some of the games that Texas has actually won over the last decade. So dating back to literally the last decade, the last 11 games, they've won 4 times. 1, 2, 3 of them would have been under. So I think Texas wins. It's under. I really like what this Texas team is. I think hashtag Texas back.
Yeah, the thing that really worries me about my Oklahoma pick is I'm looking at their receivers, and Drake Stoops is like leading the team in targets, and I don't know what to think about that. In my brain, that says that's a bad sign, but he's been pretty productive, so I don't know. But that should be a fun game, and that's kind of the first game of the day. Then as we move on throughout the day, we come up to another ranked matchup. You got the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs hosting the Kentucky Wildcats, who thrashed Florida last week, put them in the sharpshooter early and did not let go. Georgia is a 14.5 point favorite. The total is set at 48. Nick, what are your thoughts on this one? Vito has the Wildcats plus 14.5.
And I'm with Vito here. First of all, it's interesting how we're like 6 weeks into the season, and I think this is the first time we're really talking about Georgia, because they've just been. It's kind of similar to Michigan. They've just been playing like nothing. They've had a nothing schedule, and they've not really done anything necessarily interesting. I have Georgia winning this, but to me, this game is going to go exactly the way you think it is. It is in your head. Kentucky. This game is in Lexington, right?
No, at Georgia.
Oh, yes. Okay, it's in Georgia. Still, Kentucky has the 10th ranked defense in SP+. So Georgia's they're still figuring things out on offense. So they're gonna make Mr. Carson Beck work for his points. But on the other end, they're not going to be able to do anything against this Georgia defense. A young Georgia defense, but it's still Georgia's defense. This is the exact ugly street fight that you have in your mind about how this game is going to go. So I just think just by that, Kentucky will cover, but they don't really have much of a shot at actually going into Athens and winning it. So 14.5 is a lot. So give me Kentucky here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I watched the whole Kentucky Florida game last week.
I'm sorry.
It was rough after about the first 4 minutes. It got in garbage time pretty quick. But Kentucky, the thing that worries me about Kentucky is they did not look great throwing the ball, but they look legit on defense. Like they look like they have some NFL dudes up front. I think Georgia's yet to cover this year, which is another interesting side of it. I'm going to go with Kentucky. I think this could be one where we see Georgia totally snuff out the Kentucky run game, and then we all feel silly afterwards. But 14.5 with a total set at 48. Kentucky's been really explosive this year, and if they hit a couple of explosives with that kind of low total, then I think you're in the game there. So I'm going to take it. I think they're really good on defense. Like you mentioned, Nick, and I think they got like some legit NFL dudes up front. They got a D tackle that like was getting blocked by a tight end who was like 2 hands on him pushing him, and he just like grabbed the running back with his other arm and picked him up off the ground, like a legit grown man. So he's a sophomore. So I'm with you there. Nate, what are you thinking in Georgia and Kentucky? Are we all silly for taking Kentucky so far?
So, as you mentioned, I don't think Georgia's covered. I think the closest was probably the UAB game where they won by 28. But everything else, I think, has been single digits for the most part, except for, they played Ball State and they won by 42. Georgia's on a 13-game win streak in this series. They have, this is a stupid way to do it, but they've only won by 14 or more points 7 times during those 13 games. It's a pretty competitive, and I think we could agree, last year Georgia's team was really, really good, and they won 16-6. So Kentucky, and Stoops likes to muck up games, and this is definitely one that he can really kind of get nasty and dirty. And that ground game looked phenomenal against Florida. I think that may say a lot more about Florida than it does Kentucky. But I'm still taking Georgia. It's still Georgia. 14.5 is a lot, but like, it's freaking Georgia. As we talk about USF, you're bad until you're not. Like, Georgia, like, you are the best team in the country until you're not. And I still think they are the best team in the country until you're not. It could all be a moot point. This is a pretty soft schedule for them. So both teams have kind of come into this game, #not played anybody, but we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, it was interesting. So Kentucky was really heavy zone scheme coming into the Florida game, but they were playing like Eastern Kentucky. They were playing some, MAC schools, like, and they come out and just run a ton of gap scheme at Florida and just crush them and roll them off the ball. So it's interesting to kind of see them and they didn't really have to show a lot. It was over after 4 drives. So I wonder what else they got kind of under wraps there. Stieg, where are you going? We've got 3 on Kentucky, 1 on Georgia.
I hate picking SEC games. If I won't make that clear enough, just the absolute bane of my existence at this point. Like, give me the MAC matchup of the week rather than giving me these stupid ranked matchups. This game kind of reminds me of the Georgia Arkansas game last year, or was it the year before? Where like Arkansas was coming in kind of with a lot of
snuffed them out,
like momentum, like positive momentum, like you're like talking about KJ Jefferson, and then like Georgia was like, oh, let's just handle business. I don't think Georgia really wanted. I mean, knowing coming off of a national championship and a dominant national championship at that, I don't think that they're really trying. If that sounds nice, like I don't think that they're really putting all of their eggs together at this point. I think they're kind of going through the motions of the game to game week because really they haven't played anyone that's gonna give them fits. And I think when Kirby Smart says, "Oh, a Kentucky team that mucked it up against Florida last week, our bitter rival, and can clearly get up for a rivalry game," let's take this one a little bit more seriously. They have the athletes to do it. I don't like Carson Beck, but like whatever. Like he's like the AJ McCarron of Georgia football right now, where he doesn't really have to do anything spectacular. Just hand the ball off like 16 times a game, complete a 7-yard completion of Brock Bowers, who will take it 58, and then win game easy. So yeah, give me Georgia to win this one and to cover. Again, with that Auburn game last week, it's Auburn now. It's Auburn, Georgia. Like it's stupid football happens for 60 minutes and then Georgia wins and the prayer of Jordan Hare. Like, and give me Georgia here.
Well, here's my question kind of about that game. So Auburn was a 14.5 point underdog, just like Kentucky is. Obviously it was at home and the whole magic at Jordan Hare Stadium. And I think Auburn Jesus is another thing. Like, oh, there's the whole like thing that happens there. But same spread basically as Kentucky. We don't think Auburn and Kentucky are close to being equal, do we?
No, and to Steve's point, Georgia hasn't really had to show much to kind of get the job done. They, like we mentioned with USC, like they've been playing with their food a little bit. They know if they just kind of win out, they're a lock for the playoff. But at some point in this season, and this will be the halfway mark for a lot of teams this week. You got to put up a dominating effort. This would be a good time to do so against a team that you have dominated for over a decade. Like, put a mark on it. This is definitely going to be the hardest team that they've faced. I think Georgia can get up and kind of, all right. It's like when you're playing with like your little brother basketball and he like scores like 3 points on you. It's like, okay, time to roll up the sleeve. You're not scoring for the next 45 minutes.
Georgia's leaning forward in the chair now.
Yes.
They've
wiped off their hands and they're ready to play. It's like, okay. That was my go-to whenever I played NCAA against people and like it was kind of not going great in the first half. I'd be like, all right, pause. I'd go wash my hands with cold water, come back in, and it was over.
Okay, love it. And Seth, to your point about the spread from last week to this week, I truly think Jordan Hare Stadium adds like 15 points to Auburn's. Like if you put that at
there's a lot of weird stuff happens there. It is true.
Yeah, if you put that at like Legion Field, even like that's probably like Georgia by like 30.
I mean, Auburn Jesus made Delbert Alvarado miss like 14 field goals. So back in 2007, like it's a real thing.
It is. There you go. Very true. All right, let's move on to we've got for the third week in a row. We've got Notre Dame, who, would you say they escaped against Duke last week? Would that be fair to say?
Never in doubt.
The cover of 5.5 was never in doubt. Big ups to Audric Estime for not going down, setting up the game-winning field goal. That's for losers. Score touchdowns and help people cover. So they go on the road again. They're at Louisville, who's undefeated, but Louisville may be fraudulent. I don't know. Notre Dame's a 6-point favorite right now on the road at Louisville. The over-under is set at 54. And I'll get it started. Me and Vito are both going under 54. I think the Notre Dame defense we've seen is it travels. It's been really good all year. I think they'll give Louisville some problems. Louisville's kind of beating up on bad teams when they play some decent defenses like North Carolina State. They don't look as good. Now, they'll be at home. And then the Notre Dame side of it, they're really hurt at receiver, so I'm not quite sure if they'll get guys back or not, but Vito and I both like under 54. Steve, where are you going on this one?
Boy, Notre Dame has had quite a run of it this year. It feels like every single week they get like the scrappiest opponent that they could possibly match up against. So God bless the scheduling gods, the Catholics for blessing them with this. I hate this. Because like this Louisville team, I couldn't tell you more than like two things about just because it seems like they haven't played anyone. But at the same time, they've looked really good. So I don't know if I can put them on the spectrum of like they're like a UCF where they play no one for like 6 weeks and then all of a sudden they play a conference opponent and get mollywopped. Or, they could, be legit and Scott Satterfield there. No, it's
Brom.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the triangle of those three schools trading coaches for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, the prodigal child has returned. And ironically, I'm going to go with Notre Dame with that one. Trying to segue a Bible reference in there. I don't want to pick against Notre Dame right now. My
son is returned. All right. Nick, where are you leaning on this one? Notre Dame is a 6-point favorite, just under a touchdown.
Oh, the Irish. I have Notre Dame. I don't think this particular game is going to be even close. So the thing is, if this game were happening a year from now, where Brom has a full year under his belt, offense is humming, he has some of his players, like some more of his players and his recruits, then yeah, I think this could be an interesting game. Unfortunately, for this Louisville team, they've been decent in spots. They've been pretty good. But this is still kind of like a retool rebuilding, and you're not going to be prepared to go toe-to-toe with a Notre Dame team that could still damn well make the college football playoff. Like, I think they're that good. I think Sam Hartman and Audric Estime are great 1-2 combination for that offense. Yeah, I don't like maybe first, a little bit in the first quarter, first half, it's kind of close, but I think this is a game that the Irish are gonna really put their foot on the necks of a weaker team, and that's something that you really want to do, especially when you have USC coming to town next week. Yeah. So yeah, I think they handled their business early and they just roll here.
All right, Nathan, what are you thinking here?
So Notre Dame's in it's a tough month for them. Like you have the heartbreaker with Ohio State. You kind of bounce back. You get this win, and then you have Louisville, and then you got USC. Like you don't get a break until the Pitt game, and they've already played 6 games this year. Like it's already been a pretty long haul for them. I don't think Jack Plummer's that good. Like he lit up a really bad Boston College team, and then against team, especially last week, against NC State, wasn't great. And they still got the win, but wasn't great. And Sam Hartman's definitely. I think I don't want to speak for the group here, but I think we could all probably agree Sam Hartman's a better quarterback than Jack Plummer.
Very handsome too.
He is.
The beard the beard's helping, I think.
Yeah, and Jack Plummer, he's fine. He's been around. I think he's probably so far the most productive guy that's on his 3rd team in 6 years. I guess the competition is like JT Daniels, who
he's playing well.
Fine. But at Notre Dame, it's just a weird spot. I can see Louisville keeping it close, but I think the talent wins out, and then we'll actually see how Notre Dame plays against like a good competition next week.
All right, so you've got Notre Dame as well. All right, so now it's time to go off the board. Vito, I'll let Vito get us started here. Vito's got Maryland plus 19.5 against Ohio State. Should be an interesting game. I think that's where Big Noon Saturday is, so should be a fun one. Maryland, let's see. That Ohio State defense has been pretty good. We'll see if Maryland can put up some points. So that's kind of the early game on Saturday. I'm going with one of the late games. I'm going to take Oregon State minus 9.5 on the road at Cal. I just don't really believe in Cal. I think this Oregon State defense is legit. You saw them just totally snuff out Utah last week. They get a little bit extra time to prepare for this one. And I think they're a pretty good team, so I'm not too worried about them going on the road. So I'll take them minus 9.5. Nick, where are you headed off the board here?
We were talking about LSU earlier. I have Missouri plus 5.5 over LSU. Man, like I said, that LSU, they gave up over 700 yards of offense last week. 700. Like it was like that. What is it? The 2020 season, the first game where
Mississippi State, the Mike Leach.
Was KJ Costello just setting SEC records. It was that game basically. Missouri is really good. Like Missouri, like don't sleep on Missouri. Their offense has been lighting it up. What's the wide receiver?
Burton.
Yeah, Luther Burden III has been just a monster for that team. It's a bit early. It's a noon game, but it's probably the biggest SEC home game Missouri has had since a decade ago, those like 2013, 2014 teams that went to the SEC championship game. So like they're going to be hyped up for this one. Their offense has been great, and they can definitely pick apart this LSU defense. So yeah, I have Missouri covering the 5.5 point spread easily against LSU.
Yeah, that might It's unfortunate that when that game's on, because that's going to be probably one of the most entertaining games of the day. Just you'll have it opposite some other pretty good ones too. So I like that. Yeah, it's Missouri's got a good offense, and LSU's defense is so bad that you think it. You could definitely see a shootout happening for sure. Steve, where are you going off the board here?
Ooh, I'm going really off the board here. I have Tulsa over Florida Atlantic in a little American Athletic Conference matchup. Currently, they have Florida Atlantic favored by 4. The game is being played in Boca, but the unfortunate thing is that it's at 6 p.m., which is like prime dinner time for every early bird. So the game probably won't be very well attended by the FAU fans there. But I really like Tulsa's offense. It sounds wild. I didn't think that Kevin Wilson was a staggering hire as a head coach for the old Golden Hurricane, but Steve Spurrier Jr. Looks pretty good coaching them up on offense. Cardell Williams looks really, really efficient. Yes, Temple is probably going to be turbo butt this year. So, all jokes aside, I think they probably could have left a lot of points on the board last week against Temple. So give me Tulsa to pull a little upset here, an upset special.
All right, Tulsa +4. That leaves Nathan. Nathan, what is your off the board to get a new streak started?
Where are you going? New streak? You know what? To get a new streak started, I'm going with the troops. I've got Army -3 over BC. Army's at home. Last time they played it at West Point, Army won 34-31 in 2012. It's been quite a while. The last actual matchup between these two schools was in 2013. Ryan Day, I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He was the BC offensive coordinator. And then just brace yourselves when I say this name, folks. I promise you he's not going to throw back-to-back goal line fades with your USF quarterback. Todd Fitch was the wide receivers and passing game coordinator for those Boston College Eagles back in 2013. BC's not good, and I think what Army does currently in college football is a lot of fun. It's interesting. I'm a sucker for any variation of the triple, and I'm here for it. I think that the troops can get this job done. I believe in them, and I just can't stand Boston College. Like, they're so bad.
Yeah, they're not great. So, all right, so let's go through the picks one more time just to recap here. I am the only one on Oklahoma +6.5. Nate and Vito like Texas -6.5. Nick and Stieg like the under 60.5 in that game. Myself, Vito, and Nick are on Kentucky +14.5. Nate and Stieg are on Georgia -14.5. Hopefully for us, the hook is important there. Notre Dame is -6 at Louisville. Vito and I have under 54. Nate, Nick, and Stieg have Notre Dame -6. And then off the board, I've got Oregon State -9.5. Nathan's got Army -3. Vito, Maryland +19.5. Nick, Mizzou +5.5. And Stieg, Tulsa +4. So good mix of dogs and favorites there. Gentlemen, another excellent week full of insight and Nathan digging back into trends from the 70s. So that's new, but we'll expect it going forward now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best I can do.
There we go. All right. We'll be back next week to review these picks and preview the following week. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, help us game the YouTube algorithm. Thank you, boys.